Personal safety. There's a bunch of different considerations for you to take into account, and some of them are like proper clothing for the job, making sure you're not wearing any jewelry when you're at the job site or working with heavy equipment or electricity. And so there's many things that you have to take into consideration when we talk about personal safety. Um, Again, big one is the one that I mentioned before, which is the steel-toe boots. Most plants would require you to wear steel-toe boots as a millwright. Your personal apparel would be we talked about it already, clothing, for instance. If you are required to come to the shop, you will be required to wear proper coveralls, 100% cotton. Close fitting, not too loose, not too ragged, not full of dirt, because that could lead to a fire hazard or many other things. And that goes into do not wear oily stuff or greasy stuff. Wear what is supposed to be for the job. Okay, so if you're welding, for instance, you require something that will prevent the clothing from catching on fire. Do not tuck your pant leg inside your boots. Many people tend to do that. And what happens if you do tuck the pant leg in? Basically, it acts as a funnel. And so all the hot chips or welding slag or whatever is it coming in there, it can go into your boot. And then now you're going to have a harder time getting it out. And in the meantime, you're injuring yourself. Depending on where you go work, you might require to have hair nets, or if you have facial hair, then you might have to do a facial hair net too. Or in many cases, if you're wearing a respirator, for instance, then the beard can create problems with it. The seal will not be done right, so you might have to trim it so that it's safer for you. When it comes to jewelry and watches, you're not supposed to be wearing them in a shop because it could lead to other injuries. In this case, watch bands, bracelets, neck chains, or necklaces can lead to injuries. Quick war story: one of my colleagues or one of my co-workers was wearing a ring, and we both went to put a piece of steel down on a bench, and as we placed it down, this heavy piece of steel kind of pinched his ring, and instead of breaking it, it just bent it, and it became from a round ring to almost a figure of 8, if you kind of think of it that way. And so it pinched his finger, and it wasn't good. So a little war story for you. So we had to get in there and cut it with a pair of side cutters, and it wasn't good because the finger swelled up right away. And so it could lead to things like that, any kind of jewelry that is loose, like necklaces and stuff, can get cut in rotating equipment. So that's why it's very, very important not to wear any of that. As I discussed with you earlier, we talked about the different type of clothing and different things that you might be required to wear at job sites. So we call that personal protective equipment. Okay, this personal protective equipment comes in as not as a main way of protecting you, but as the last thing we can do to protect you. So first thing is attitude, and the last thing would be having some sort of barrier before anything happens. So protective equipment, personal protective equipment can be divided into the following categories. These categories are must know, must remember, must be able to define at one point or another. You have head protection, you have lung protection, you have eye protection, ear protection, hand protection, foot protection. Those are the categories that the Millwright Manual has divided for you. Many other booklets um, might have an extended version of this, but we will go with the Millwright Manual right now. We'll start by discussing head protection. So the Workers' Compensation Board and some employers demand hard hats. This doesn't happen in every job site out there, but many job sites require you to wear it. So you have to go by what they have. Some companies would have, some employers would have what is called a gate-to-gate PPEs. And the gate-to-gate meaning as soon as you cross the first gate, you have all of the PPEs that they require. And you must go by what they have. Okay, and not every job site requires that, so you have to go basically with what they will present to you. All hard hats are adjustable. They come in different styles and different models, and depending on what you're required to do with them, will suit the job. As you will eventually look into once you start doing your research, you'll be looking into how are they made, what's the insides, what's the inside look like, what's the outside, and some of them have face shields attached to it, some of them have earmuffs attached to them, and there's many different styles out there, and it all has to go with what your employer requires you to wear. And some hard hats, for instance, are metallic and must not be worn on if you're working with electrical or with electricity. Electrical workers wear what is called the Class B hard hat, according to the Millwright Manual. If you start your new search, it would be the classification would change a little, but we'll stick to what the Millwright Manual states right now. So the Class B would be the one that reduces an electrical shock. The Workers' Compensation Board, or Works ABC, regulates all of this, and it makes it that it is prohibited for you to basically do anything on the hard hats. Some employers might have something that they add to it, but that is based on what they are required to do. So basically, you have to follow the bouncing ball for your employer. Our next one is the lung protection. So depending again on where you work, a little war story where I worked for many years many years ago, and I did it for a long period of time too, was grinding the weld of frames and doing a lot of polishing aluminum, and that basically there's a lot of stuff that you breathe in, so you're required to wear proper lung protection. Because again, the different particles that you're exposed to. And in some cases, for instance, if you're welding, for instance, you got all the fumes that can come into your way. So you must wear the proper respirator, and you also must be tested for the respirator that you're supposed to or are required to wear. There's some examples for you here. Some types of different masks, and you will expand in your search and the different types of respirators that there are out there.